Welcome to Reduce Cyber Risk and your 5 self-study tips for a CISSP exam success. Hi, my name is Sean Gerber, and I am the person that is responsible for Reduce Cyber Risk and also for this training you're getting from just going out there and checking me out. So we appreciate you doing that. Now, before we get into this, as far as what we're going to do, the 5 tips that you need to be successful, I'm going to go ahead and give you some background information on the CISSP and also some other key things you need to consider as you're looking to take this exam. Now, as you know, if you're looking at the Certified Information System Security Professional certification, that's a mouthful, there's a lot to this, and it's much more than just going out and taking an exam. So I'm going to give you just some key things you need to consider as you're prepping for this exam. Now, before we get started with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself, just a quick down and dirty version. I've been in security for going on over 18, going on 19 years now. And my background is I flew military airplanes, used to be a navigator, a weapons systems officer from the B-1 bomber. And then I ended up being the commander for a red team, an Air Force red team that used to do penetration testing for military installations and DoD installations across the globe. So I've got a good background from a hacker and cybersecurity standpoint there. Then I ended up moving into a multinational and worked as a security architect, working as a manager as a security operations center, and then finally as a chief information security officer for a multinational. So I've got the background, I've got some of the street creds to help you out, and on top of that, I'm a CISSP. So as you're getting ready for your CISSP, you need to ask yourself, what are you looking for? Is it going to be self-study? Is it going to be boot camp? Or is it going to be both? Now, my background, I took it self-study. And honestly, the first time, I failed it. Yeah, I did. And I took it the second time, I passed it. But because of that, I learned a lot during that failure, which is usually what happens when you fail at something. However, I also noticed as I was putting together this training around this, is that I didn't have a lot of experience in what it'd take to take the test. Now, the test has changed a bit from when I took it, but the concepts are still the same. So we're going to kind of go over some of the brief ideas around that. Now, the breadth of the CISSP, I use it on a daily basis. Now, as a Chief Information Security Officer, or the CISO, that's commonly referred to as, I deal with all of these aspects that you will be trained in on the CISSP. And so it's important for you to get the knowledge, and therefore, it's just a good test to have. Now, the disaster recovery and software development, I go from everything from that. I deal with business continuity, disaster recovery, from hot and cold, as far as when you're dealing with a disaster and your startup zones and what you're dealing with from a backup and recovery solutions, to software development, to risk registries, to IP and compliance, you name it. Everything that's in the CISSP, I have dealt with it in some form, shape, or another on a daily, weekly, and yearly basis. Now, how does it start? Well, the sponsorship of the CISSP comes from ISC Squared. It's the International Information System Security Certification Consortium. Yeah, no wonder they labeled their terms Certified Information System Security Professional. They can't get smaller words or terms. It was created in the mid-'80s, and the purpose was to provide some level of standardization around in a certification program as it relates to this, in this case, security field. They created, which means their common body of knowledge, which means all the knowledge they created to put this test together was created by the 1990s. They had everything they needed to do it. So they decided to launch the CISSP in 1994-ish, right around in there. And so the point of it is that was when it first rolled out. Now, I became a CISSP in 2011. So it's, no, actually 2007 is when I became a CISSP. So shortly thereafter, a few years after that. But the point of it is that it's morphing and it's growing. As the cybersecurity field changes and morphs as well, that's a key part around it. Now, you can check out my recent podcast as well. It talks about, I think it's podcast 21, talks a little bit about, or 22, the changes that are occurring in the CISSP and as a CISO in general. So it's a really good podcast. Check it out. Now, some ISC Squared details. Now, the purpose is, again, they maintain the common body of knowledge, the CBK, and they provide certification for information security people, right? They do that in a lot of different areas, and they conduct certification training and conduct exams, and that's how you're going to get your CISSP. They certify people to provide that level of examinations for you, and you're going to go take this test, and you're going to really just struggle because it sucks really bad. Sorry, it stinks. That's a better word. It really is not very, it's hard. It's really hard. But that's okay, because that's why you're here, to try to get some more information. They also do continuing education, which leads to more of an accreditation aspect. They have many, many certifications that are supported from the CISSP, the SSCP, the Certified Informational Hacker. There's many, many certifications that they support at iscsquared.org. But I will say that of all the tests that are there, and I haven't taken all of them, but of the tests that I've taken and the ones that I've talked to, the CISSP is the granddaddy of them all, and it is a painful test. Have I scared you yet? No, it's okay. You get some good training, you'll do fine. People pass it all the time. Now, the domains were updated in April 15th of 2018, so it's changed from, the last change I think was 2 years ago. And there's 8 primary domains. There's a security and risk management domain, asset security, security architecture and engineering, communications and network security, identity and access management, it's a big one, security testing and assessments, security operations, and finally, security development, software development security. So again, those are the key aspects around the 8 domains. Now, you got to be pre-qualified to take the CISSP. You have to be a practicing security professional. Now, that's the first qualification. There's actually, we'll talk about the second one here in a little bit, or I should say the second option. And you need to have at least 5 years of full-time paid work experience working as a CIS or as a security professional. Now, that's salary commission with at least 2 of the 8 domains. So if you go back, of these 8 domains that you have, security and risk management, asset security, and so forth, you need to be working in at least 2 of the 8 domains for the past 5 years. So that's the question. Now, you got to ask yourself, what if you're in a small business and you are the only person that is doing your IT? Well, you can utilize that capability as long as you're integrating security into what your daily roles are. It's important to do that. And realistically, if you're in any sort of infrastructure at all, you need to be incorporating security into it, period, dot. It's really, realistically, it's just you got to do it, and you got to think about it, and you need to get smart on it. And as things are changing with the cloud and all those aspects around security, it's a must. So just saying. Okay, or you can get 4 years experience with a recent IT, information technology or information security degree. So they open this up for people that are going to school to learn how to to get this kind of background, right? The information security background. So that's a capability, and they call it their associates program. Now, you can take the test early, so you can take the CISSP test early, get that done, get it knocked out of the way, before you have the 5 years of prerequisites done. Now, they give you 6 years to finish that 5 years of knowledge. So they give you some time in there as you're maybe going to school, getting a job, maybe you're working as an intern, those kind of things. They're adding some buffer in there for that 5 years, so basically a year to work through that. You also have to have the endorsement of a active participating CISSP. Once the test is done, you can pass it without the endorsement, but to get the no kidding certification, you got to have an endorsement from a CISSP. Now, the overview. I am sure you're currently aware of this. If you're looking at this, the Certified Information System Security Professional certification, you're probably well aware of what this entails. But the 30,000-foot view is this. You've got to be a mile wide and an inch deep on all aspects around the CISSP. So, in reality, you may know disaster recovery. You don't have to know everything about disaster recovery, but you need to be able to talk logically and so that you can talk to senior leaders about it. You need to also know how to implement it. That comes to encryption. You don't need to know everything about encryption like Mr. Schneier does, but at the same time, you need to understand what is it and the terminology around it and how does it work. Now, it's a bugger, no lying. It's just not fun, but you can do it. I know you can do it. There's 2 forms. There's a computer adaptive testing form and the linear fixed form. Okay, so we'll get into those in a minute, but what they are. Now, the CAT form is basically with anybody that's taking it in English, they have to take it via the CAT form or the computer adaptive testing. If you're in another language, then you can do the linear or fixed form. Now, the computerized adaptive testing. Now, this gives you the questions based on how you answer. So it's thinking. It's using some stuff in there so that if you answer this way and you answer incorrectly, it gives you a different question. It looks at your strengths and your weaknesses, and it feeds you questions based on that. You can be done early. So you can get into this thing, you can take the test, and you know what? You're done in 15 minutes. You're like, woohoo, I won. No, you didn't win. Yeah, you failed. And so that stinks, right? If it realizes that you don't know what you're talking about, it will kick you out early. And last time I checked, pricing for a test is around $1,200. So yeah, you better study up for it. It takes about 3 hours to complete. Now, when I took it, I got, I think, 4 or 5 hours to complete it, and it took every bit of that. You get 3 hours to complete this test from the adaptive side of the house. Now, the linear side, we'll get into that in a minute. It's actually a bit more. You get 100 to 150 questions to go through, and I get at a passing grade is 700 out of 1,000 points. So basically 70% is what you get. And you don't get a published score. That was one thing I noticed after I took the test. I was like, okay, what's my score? You don't get a score. It's either you win or you lose. You know, Caesar says you live or Caesar says you die. One of the two. It's just that. You don't get to find out if you were 963 or 701. It doesn't matter. You passed. Now, the linear fixed form is a standard questions multiple choice, okay? So it isn't making adaptive changes based on how you answer. It's standard multiple choice. It gives you 6 hours to do this, so you get a little bit longer to deal with it, and there's 250 questions out of that. Now, you also have to get a 70% or 700 out of 1,000, and again, no published test score. The languages are there, available. It's French, German, Brazilian, Portuguese, Spanish, Japanese, simplified Chinese, and Korean. So any of those, you can take the linear fixed form and then just plan on sticking around for about 6 hours while you take it. So again, I like the shorter version, but man, you don't want to goof up, that's for sure. All right, so here's some examination weights. Now, as you're looking at the 8 domains that we talked about earlier, they weight each of these domains a bit differently. Now, you have security and risk management is 15%. Asset security is 10%. Architecture and engineering is 13%. Communications and network security is 14%. Identity and access management is 13%. Security assessments and testing is 12%. Security operations is 13%. And software development security is big, whopping 10%. Now, as you notice, they vary. They're pretty close, right? They are differ from the lowest is 10% to the highest is 15%, but bottom line is they're pretty close as far as how they're weighted. And that's how you'll get the test questions will be based off of that. So that's why you got to know all of it. An inch wide or a mile wide and an inch deep. Now, testing frequency, how does this work? Well, the testing frequency is additive, which basically means if you goof up a test, you get the opportunity to retake it. Now, the thing is they force you to retake or to restudy and do some more studying if you were to fail. So what happens is that you get a maximum of 3 times in 12 months that you can take a test. So you get basically once, a little more than a quarter. You must wait 30 days after your first failure. So if you goof it up on January 1st, well, January's probably not a really good one, but let's just say January 1st. You can't take the test until basically February 1st, okay? Actually, it's February 31st or January 31st, but we'll just go with February 1st. Now, if you fail it again and you just dropped $1,200, so now you're down $2,400 US dollars, you have to wait 90 days after the second attempt. So now you're up to 120 days between tests. Then you have to wait 180 days after the third attempt. So it's basically going to take you a whole year, but they're going to say, you may be willing to throw your money away, but we're going to force you to slow down so that you can pass the test. So again, that's just something to keep in mind. I recommend you pass it the first time, at least from a financial standpoint, because, yeah, it gets expensive. Testing tips. So here's some tips. Now, these aren't the 5 self-study tips I'm going to get into, but these are some other tips that you want to consider as you're taking the CISSP. Now, most are multiple choice, right? So some level of multiple choice, and some are very straightforward. Some of these are like rock solid, easy, no problem, can get through them. Some are more involved. They're best practices and appropriate concepts, right? You need to select the best answer, which may be the least correct. Yes, that's it. They play with your mind and they give you goofy questions. So you need to make sure that you get the best answer, which could be the least correct of your choices. If I haven't confused you yet, yeah, that's how it works. So it's fun. It's real fun. So, but you want to do is get rid of the easy no answers. So if you know, all right, that you've got question A and D are no, hands down, no, get rid of them. Pitch them out. Don't even waste any time on them, right? Avoid taking too much time. Now, when I took it from a linear test standpoint, what I would do is I'd go through. If I couldn't deal with the question and I didn't quite know, I'd narrow down the 2 that I knew for sure were no. I'd move on to the next question. And then I would come back around. If I started running out of time and I go, I got no time left, I would just put down something. Of the 50, because you really have a 25% chance of guessing correctly on a 4 question multiple choice or 4 answer multiple choice. If you can narrow it down to 2, you got a 50-50 shot of guessing the right one. Just saying, something to consider as you're taking the test. Bottom line, though, be prepared. Got to be prepared for this thing. Now, to the 5 self-study tips in exam preparation, this is what you need to be aware of. Oh, okay. 1, set up dedicated time to study. Yeah, right. No brainer. Well, I mean it. You got to do it. I did it myself. I set up every night from like 9 o'clock till about midnight for about 3 months just to go through it. Okay. I wasn't very smart. I've got a 3rd grade education. Not really, but I do. I sometimes feel like I have a 3rd grade education. And it took me a while to get through this. Now, take lots of notes. You have a notebook specifically with areas and questions that you need to come back to. And if you have something you don't know, write it down, but don't dwell on it. Move on. Again, it's just like taking the test. Study it, learn it, move on. Study it, learn it, move on. If you don't know, write it, note to yourself, come back to it. Okay? Otherwise, you'll get lost in this and it'll just really frustrate you because you may get an answer as you get further into your studies. You may get an answer to your actual question the first time around. Utilize various outside resources, preparation books. I recommend more than one. They have different spins on them. But again, there's all various CISSP books out there on the market. They are about 10 inches thick, yeah, and they weigh a ton, but they're full of information, and I'd recommend getting them. Now, ISC Squared's got some really good ones out there. They're training manuals, but there's gobs of them that you can use. Look at blogs, podcasts, test banks, webinars, all of those things. Anything you can get your hands on that's focused on the CISSP. Now, the question with test banks is that you got to be careful of those. Some people will think, I just studied all the questions on the test bank, and I'll go take the test, and I'll pass it. That will not work for you on this. There might be people out there who say that it will work. You may get lucky, but I would not recommend it. You got to know the content to do it. But again, this is more about taking the test and answering the questions correctly than actually the correct answer. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. Video courses. Also look online. There's various video courses that you can take. Okay, Udemy's got them out there. I got them as well, right? So I've got a CISSP course that I've got. I'm just finishing up the recording on it as of when I wrote this. But bottom line is that I've got a CISSP course that I put out. I've also got it put out for another company that is not part of Reduce Cyber Risk, but they asked me to do it. So I've got my training out with another company as well. So there is various videos out there around CISSPs, but you can get it here from Reduce Cyber Risk if you want as well. That's up to you. No big deal. Whatever works for you. But I recommend all of them. No matter where you go, get them all. Take practice quizzes. Reduce Cyber Risk. I'm going to have an 80 practice exam questions available on the site for you. We'll get that to you. It'll be part of this email. If you sign up for my email, I'll get that out to you so that you can have those practice questions to look at. Are they definitive questions that you need to have to pass the test? No. Will they help you with the concepts? Oh, yes, they will. And they're going to be very useful for you. So I highly recommend you sign up for the email. By signing up for the email course with me or putting your email name out there, you will get them. Look for free test banks. Again, they are not to help you pass the test. They are more to get you in mind of how to actually take the test. Don't memorize the questions like I mentioned, just concepts. Don't memorize them, okay? Because your mind will go numb trying to memorize all of these things. Believe me, it will. It'll be like an ice cream headache. Your head will just hurt. Again, we talked about the April 18th, new test. You also visit with industry leaders on ISACA meetings, ISC Squared meetings, or even your workplace if you have people that can help you with the CISSP. Ask lots of people, get experience with it. The more experience you can get knowing these concepts, the better off you are. Number 5, line up a CISSP endorsement now. Do it ahead of time. Because again, this has to be digitally signed by an ISC Squared certified professional, and the endorser must attest to your professional experience. They got to know you, okay? They got to know that what you're saying is true. I work at Billy Bob's chocolate factory, okay? What do you do with there? Well, I maintain their data center, and I do all kinds of security for the data center. Got to have it. You must attest, so the person who's endorsing it must attest to the best of their knowledge that you have the experience. They have to also be an active ISC Squared credential holder in good standing. They got to have that. And they must be endorsed within, so you, as the person, must be endorsed within 9 months of passing the exam. So if you pass the exam, within 9 months, you got to be endorsed, and it's got to be submitted for you to be certified. Otherwise, you went to all that work for nothing. Okay? Don't do that. Just don't do that. So again, those are the 5 that you got to know for your getting ready for your CISSP. Here's some references on where I've got all this information. This will be available to you as well through the email by signing up for my email distribution. And we are excited to have you part of Reduce Cyber Risk. It's an awesome site. I love it. Lots of stuff out there for you. My ultimate goal is to get you the cybersecurity training that you need made in a simple way that you can understand. Okay? Again, background, it's been great talking to you with Reduce Cyber Risk. I hope you enjoyed this stuff. Look forward to chatting with you some more. You'll be getting some emails coming to you here very, very shortly. All right. Thanks again for signing up. Have a great day. See ya.